Hey, everybody. Welcome to my Ask Me Anything. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, James. Hey, Jess. How are you guys? You guys know the drill. Please, in the comments down below, let me know where you are from. I see Jess is from Seattle. We got James from Tennessee. It is supposed to be Faith Friday right now, but I wanted to take an hour and just a lot of questions have been coming in through the Facebook group and wanted to address some of the questions that were submitted. And a lot of you submitted questions beforehand. If you are here live, once again, just say hi. Let me know where you're from. I'd love to make this personal. Hey, Brent from Texas. How are you today, my friend? What city are you in, Brent? Love me some Rudy's tacos, breakfast tacos, the brisket one specifically out of Austin. If you're in Austin, that would be amazing. Um, Anyways, I'm going to take all your questions today. That's what an Ask Me Anything is, an AMA. I'll stay as long as needed. My wife's going to wait on us to get done. Then we'll start Faith Friday and go through our weekly audit. If you have been through the life plan training or in my mastermind, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I just wanted to come in and address some of these questions. So thank you for being here today and spending your Friday with me. We're going to get you prepared for a great weekend. And if depending on where you live, where we are, my girls get out of school today, and then we are on fall break next week, which is kind of cool. So, hey, Eric from Minneapolis, Glen Rose, awesome. Anita from Columbus, Ohio. Thank you all for joining. I'm just going to jump right in with the very first question. This is from Katie Dunlap. She plans on being here. Katie, if you're here, say hello. I would like to know if you do a cost seg and then 1031 into another property, do you have to pay it back? So, great question, Katie. If you do a cost segregation study on an existing property and then you sell that property and you put the proceeds into a 1031 exchange and then you qualify through the 1031 exchange parameters to buy your next property, then you do not have to pay back the recapture for the cost segregation benefit. If you sell the property, if you do a cost seg now, like in 2022, and then you sell the property now in 2023, and you've accelerated all that depreciation from like 27 and a half years down to 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, then the IRS is going to want their money back. The only way really to protect that is going to be in a 1031 exchange. So the answer is you do have to pay that back unless you do that 1031 exchange. Now, there's some things I want you to understand about this. A lot of people have gone in, bought properties, they've seen the appreciation go up. They've sold the property a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. They did cost segs, especially on some bigger properties, close to $1 million plus. You have a lot of tax burden, a lot of benefit you got out of it. But remember, the IRS wants their money. So then they go and they 1031. And you do this multiple times. I don't want you to go down that path and tie up too much of your capital. Remember, pretty much once you do a 1031, and if you have a cost seg rolled into that, it's going to be very challenging to ever pull any cash out of it. So you need to be very, very cognizant of how much of that. It's what I call the encumbered part, the tax encumbered part of my portfolio. I keep that at less than 30%. I want as much cost seg benefit as the next guy. But number one, Ryan Bakey will tell you, I'll tell you, don't ever buy a property just for the cost seg benefit. That's kind of the icing on the cake. So buy for cash flow, buy for appreciation, take the cost seg as the icing on the cake, and just be careful that you don't get over cost segged over 1031 because that can cause issues if you run into a challenging time financially and need to access that cash at any time. So you think about it, you buy say $1 million property, you get a $200,000 cost seg benefit, right? And you roll that in, and then you 1031 and you sell that property and you make 200,000 in the first year. Now you got a $400,000, in tax burden. If you fall into that 37% tax bracket, that's a pretty big chunk of money on 400 grand if you have to get out of that second property before the acceleration of that depreciation has expired. We need to always understand the ramifications on the back end. Hey, Eric and Eric. Let's see. Eric Corson. There's plenty of talk about finding a realtor when buying a property, but what are some of the key attributes when it comes to selling? How key is an STR expert realtor when selling? I think that's a really good question. I can tell you that I only use agents that have STR experience, and here's why. So I went on a 10-hour road trip yesterday, as you know, Eric, looking at a property. I used an STR experienced agent in this transaction. We have an offer in. If I'm going to exit out of an STR, especially if I have really good numbers, and I do, I outperform the 90th percentile of AirDNA by 52%, then I want that STR agent's network in the STR space representing me. So that way he can present the performance, he can present the financials, and hopefully get me a little bit higher price, justified. Now, we're not getting standard cap rate multiples like we do in multifamily at this point. But if you do have good financials to support the property, it does make it more attractive. I do believe, having a seller's agent really important in their personal network, their trustworthiness, their brand, that they can actually bring buyers to the table. I look at that as the most important component, whether it's STR or just selling my primary house that I'm in right now. So that's why, I use Tyler Kuhn, I use Avery Carl, I use my girl Lauren in Montana. I actually won't use a non-STR experienced agent, and they have to own their own STRs as well. They have to understand the performance. They have to understand AirDNA STR insights. Outside of that, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. Eric Weichman, would you charge for outdoor pool heat, Western North Carolina, or try and bake into the pricing for the summer months? That's a great question in the summer months. And I've got properties in Western North Carolina and I don't have pools there, but I can tell you what I do at other properties is I always charge for heating. It's an added expense. I think the market really dictates what's going to happen with that. It is interesting during the summertime, if you're talking like Beach Mountain, Boone, Asheville, kind of that area. It can be cool enough to where you can't, keep that pool warm. So I do understand that. I think a lot of that has to do with your financial situation. I think a lot of it has to do with what the marketplace is going to dictate you have to do. Much easier for us to get away with that at the beach, I do believe. But I have never tried that in Western North Carolina. So I think you just kind of have to test the market. At most of my properties, I charge between $40 to $75 a day for pool heating, specifically when I have gas heat, and it's going to be a little bit more expensive. But I'm communicating with them all the way through the process as well. So there's, no day before they arrive type of surprises or anything like that. So if it was me, I would probably be charging. There's no question. Catherine, hey, Catherine, how are you? If you do a cost seg for tax benefits, does that need to be repaid if you do a 1031 exchange? No. I just answered that question. You might have jumped in, a little bit late after I answered it because that was the first question that I did for you. You do not if you're doing a 1031 exchange. If you ever get out of that 1031 exchange, like if you sell a property, do your cost seg property you bought last year, do a cost seg, file it on your tax return, then you sell now, roll it in, and then you sell again, you're always going to need to keep that property inside the 1031. If you ever decide to try to access that cash and not keep it inside of that tax shelter, then the government's going to want their money back. Alicia Wright would love a deep dive into your Facebook marketplace strategy. So I don't do anything in marketplace, Alicia. People do get marketplace and buy sell trade groups mixed up. I do buy sell trade group strategy. So number one, I look at my top 5 markets where people are coming to my properties from. So for me, I always use Gulf Shores as an example. So it's Dallas, it's St. Louis, it's Nashville, it's Indianapolis, it's Chicago. Those are like my top 5 markets that people are coming from. So I join buy sell trade groups in the wealthiest parts of those areas. So and I do all of them, but I really feel like Dallas, I focus on Highland Park, University Park, the super wealthy areas, the Midtown, wealthy high rises, that type of stuff. In Nashville, it's Williamson County, where I live, is really my focal point. So I look for groups that are based in those counties, those sub-locations, and I'm going to join 10 to 20 in each one of those cities. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to post my properties in Gulf Shores. I use a lot of those same cities for my Smith Lake, Alabama, but really that's Nashville and Birmingham and Mississippi. So I'm going to those 5 or 6 cities. Then I'm going to rotate posting into those groups. Here's the key. You have to read the group rules. So some of them don't allow. You don't want to get kicked out. And usually these are like real estate agents that own the groups. So, and a lot of them have multiples. So if you get kicked out of one, you can get banned from 2 or 3 at one time. Follow the group rules. So how you post and what you say is the make or break. So anybody that comes in and says, oh, well, Those don't work. That's because you're not fucking doing it right. That I promise you. If you go in and you use emojis, make it personal. Don't turn it into a sales pitch, and don't just post the link to Airbnb or your directing or your book direct site. I use a lot of emojis. I'm using fire for fire pit. I'm using a pool. I'm using waves for beach. A boat. If I have like an open boat slip at my lake property, all these things to show your amenities, make it the copywriting needs to be personal. Then you put it in. Then you need to have the pre-canned reply message. So you can, when you get all those messages that are going to come through, because they're all going to be, is this available? Is this available? Is this available? And you don't just reply yes. You need to have that written out with the reply so you can copy paste. So you paste, type in, hey, Kathy, hey, Bill, hey, Tom, hey, Dick, hey, Harry, type in first name and then paste. Always include your Airbnb and Vrbo links with your direct booking link. So I will always put the value proposition here. This is the marketing part of the copywriting. Hey, here is a link to our Airbnb and Vrbo listing. By the way, if you'd like to save the booking fees, here's our direct booking link. So a lot of people will make the mistake of just, I don't want to send them to Airbnb or Vrbo. I'm going to send them directly to my direct booking. Well, remember, this is cold traffic. These people don't know you. You have no relationship with them. So the Airbnb and Vrbo links are trust agents for them to see that you're legit, right? So you want to always include those. And if they go to them, that's fine. They're the ones that are going to end up paying the fees. It does cost us a little bit, but who cares? We've just acquired a customer without having to spend any advertising dollars at all. So that's what I do with the buy, sell, trade strategy. Hopefully that will help you. I know you give tips on I know you give a ton of tips for Airbnb, but do you list on Vrbo at all? Yes, I do. Every property's on Vrbo and Airbnb. Any tips for maximizing your listing there? No. Do the exact same thing through Airbnb. And really, if you have a couple of properties, you probably have a PMS like Hospitable or OwnerRez. You should be making those updates in that platform, and it should be pushing the same stuff out to both of them. That's where most of our guests are in our area book, and I'd like to bump my listing to page 1 on Vrbo. Nobody knows what the algorithms really do on either Airbnb or Vrbo. Just like the Google web spam team is the only one that knows it with Google. So from us as an SEO, which is really what we're talking about with listing optimization, is it's testing. That's what it is. So you need the right data to be able to test. That's why I use RankBreeze. But you can't even, I was an SEO for like 9 years, not like, I did do it for other companies, but I also did it for myself when I had a marketing agency. And what everybody optimizes for Google. We don't go in and try to optimize for MSN or Yahoo or DuckDuckGo. We optimize for the biggest platform. Airbnb is the biggest platform, so you need to optimize for Airbnb. Nobody has any data on this. It's really just test, iterate, test, iterate. And one of the big things when we're testing, like if you go in and you change your title from title A to title B, and if you see a drop, which will happen sometimes in rankings, you need to go back to your benchmark. You need to go back to A. The worst thing you can do is go from A to B to C. If you go A, B, C, now you've lost your place with A and you don't have a benchmark. You don't have a barometer. So always go from A to B, complete your test, either go back to A and then let it sink in again, then start over. So I know it's a little bit more time consuming, but it's super critical that we go down that path and make sure that we're keeping it isolated to run true A/B testings on any platform. In the buy sell trade groups, how do you actually post? I post it into the buy sell trade groups, and I do not click the real estate. We are not real estate. I post it as other, and then I will share when it's done. It'll let you share it into the additional buy sell trade groups, and then add the marketplace. Never go to marketplace first. Let's see, Candace, how are you? Will you charge for pellets for a barbecue pit? We are not in a vacation market. Avatar is typically men workers for more of a midtermish stay. No, I would not. I would have them supply their own pellets if you're doing midterm or lower ADR on an STR. I do super properties. I have very high ADR. My average ADR portfolio wide is just under $1,100 a night right now. That's portfolio wide. So that's the type of stuff that I do supply is pellets and propane tanks and stuff like that. I think that we have to supply those amenities based on our ADR and based on our profit margin. So we need to make sure that we scale that up and we scale that down. Let's see. Wrestling with real estate. Love it. For example, it asks for price. What do you put in those pages? That's a great question. I just put usually 1 or 1, 2, 3, 4. And you will get the Karen that will come in and bitch and complain. You said I could book this for $1 and whatever. Just ignore them. That happens every single time that you come in and you post. Don't worry about it. Just put in $1 or 1, 2, 3, 4. Kristen, thank you, Kristen. I appreciate that very much. Working hard to get less fat, if that's what you're referring to, or my new hat. Let's see. Our STR is an older crowd area, so I think the older crowd shies away from Airbnb. That's Kristen. Yeah, that can be 100%. You got to test it. Not every market is the same, but you still the listing optimization tactics are going to be the same on Vrbo versus Airbnb. They're not going to be different. Sundar, have you tried Price Lab's new algorithm? Yes, I have. I actually went into their booth and got a demo and talked to them about it when I was at the VRMA conference. I have seen it. I am doing it. I think that everybody's going to, I think everybody's going to like it. If you follow the stuff that I'm throwing down, everything is about being hyper local anyways. So it's going to give you a little bit better targeting on the rate structure to where we're not pulling in, competition and competitors' rates that are too far away from us geographically that would really not be competitive amongst other things. If you guys are just joining us, thanks for joining in. Please say hello in the comments down below. Let me know where you're from and pop your questions in. I'm kind of trying to rotate going back and forth between questions that were submitted previously and questions that are coming in here through the group. Isn't pricing the biggest determining factor for your rank on Airbnb? Turner, nobody knows if it is or it isn't. We make assumptions. It is a big factor. Don't know that it is the biggest. Most likely it is. But remember, in SEO, nobody knows except for the team that runs the algorithm. It's a very, well-kept secret of what they're doing. Pricing will dramatically impact your rankings because it's definitely top 3. It's probably number 1. I use that in different forms because my pricing is so high. I am not a guy that likes to discount unless it is super last minute, middle of the week. The dates that I do lower my pricing are Sunday through Wednesday, right? I really try to keep my pricing integrity on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights because those are my big ticket items. But specifically right now in a slow off season, I'm really optimizing and dropping rate as I get super close inside my average lead time, as I get super close to arrival dates, specifically Monday through Wednesdays. Hopefully that helps. But it is a big deal within the algorithm. Hey, Bill, how are you from Cleveland? Or Alexander, not Bill. I'm Bill. Welcome, Alexander from Cleveland. I do use lower pricing in far out strategies, just like I do with single day minimums. So I keep my calendar open for 12 months. Occupancy and availability is a big deal for the algorithm. So if you're doing like 3 months, 6 months, you need to change that and go to 12 months. So we are in November. I am using September right now, Sundays and Mondays in September, and also in October to lower pricing and lower minimum. So I have lower pricing and I will extend. I'll stay at like a 2-day minimum in those slow times on like Sunday through Wednesday, but then I'll drop my pricing on like one of those dates super low, but they have to do at least a 2-day booking. So I'm trying to leverage my overall pricing strategy way out. We're talking a year out that probably won't book on, very, very docile dates, and also my minimums to be able to keep that down. Because look, pricing, cancellation policy, nightly minimums, those are some of the core components that we do have control over. So like if you lower if you have high pricing, high ADR, strict cancellation, high minimum, and you like went and switched all that to the most flexible cancellation policy, like cancel anytime, lowered from $500 a night to $100 a night, went from 4 night minimums to 1 night minimums, you would book instantly, everything. So it's this fine line of, really you have to make the decision as the host. Are you going to be an occupancy driven host, or are you going to be a revenue driven host? I choose to be the revenue driven host because I do everything kind of in that Louis Vuitton, the high end luxury space. Hey, Randall, my man from New Jersey. I don't want to compete on that lower side. But if you don't have a super property, if you have an average property, if you have the average bedding, if you don't have fire pits, you don't have all that type of stuff. And a lot of you have those average properties, and that's a-okay. You're going to need to maximize more occupancy at a lower price point to be able to increase profitability. Because if you don't have all the value stacking that I talk about, then it's going to be really hard to stay in that luxury sector or raise pricing from 150. It's hard enough to go from 150 to 170 when everybody's in the 140 to 160 range. It's even harder to try to get that to 200. Much easier for me to go from 1100 to 1200 than it is for you to go from 150 to 200. We always got to keep that in mind. And the competition is going to be a dictator in what we can and we cannot do inside of that space. Let's see. Rob King, what are your thoughts on using QR codes as images in your Airbnb and VRBO listing? Only if you want to get kicked off the platform, if you're going to link in that QR code, which is the only reason that you would do it. I would never do that myself. Too much risk. I know before interest rates went up so high, we were all trying to get 30% cash on cash. What is a realistic goal to hit currently? So number one, that's all going to vary based on the size of the property. You got to, as your investment price, the housing price, the apartment complex price goes up, typically, specifically with single family homes, the lower the cash on cash return from a percentage standpoint. So as you get into bigger properties, really cash flow is probably going to be a little bit bigger of a play than it is cash on cash. Very challenging to find 30% cash on cash properties over $1 million purchase price these days. You're going to have to really go, and it's always been this way. It doesn't matter what the interest rates are, but the lower the price property, typically the higher cash on cash, higher price property, more cash flow. I want a sweet spot of both. I'm still not doing anything unless I have 20% cash on cash today, and I'm still looking for 30%. I'm also applying these very same metrics when I'm going through and doing a COE as opposed to COC. COC, cash on cash. COE is cash on equity. So everybody right now today should be doing cash on equity audits of their properties. And I'm looking for those same percentages. And I'm making a decision when I go through and look at my cash on equity. If I decide that I want to sell, one, can I get higher returns by reinvesting? Two, how long is my payback? Just like we use 20%, it could be a 4-year payback, 3, 4, 5-year payback. If I look at my equity and I have 40,000 in net income, but yet I've got 200,000 in equity. Okay, well that 40,000 goes into 205 times, so it's going to take me 5 years to be able to tap that equity of $200,000. What would happen if I pull out that 200,000 and go reinvest? Can I find a $800,000 property with a $50,000 to $60,000 renovation budget that will do more than that $3,500 a month in net income, that $40,000 a year? That's, once again, that goes back into the pro forma. So I carry over my cash, my net income from property that would be sold, because I lose that, to factor that into the delta in the new pro forma as I'm evaluating new property. Hopefully that makes sense. Whew, that's a lot of talking in 30 minutes. Hey, Vladimir, how are you, buddy? I remember your last Vegas limo show when you said you were moving to the Airbnb business. Thank you, Vladimir. Appreciate it. If you have a question, let me know. If you guys are listening and you have questions, please drop it in. I will stay as long as you have questions. If not, I will be moving on to Faith Fridays. Let's see. Andrew Keller, what would you do after you managed to save up your first 100K? At a photo shoot today, and mastermind members, so won't be able to tune in. So he's doing a photo shoot for one of my mastermind members. Working on slashing away the profits and the CD ladders. I can eventually get real estate someday. So what would I do after you manage to save up your first 100,000? I would save another 100,000, Andrew. So if you're, I wouldn't want you to go spend. This is one of the biggest problems for those of you that are getting in trouble financially is number one, you're spending way too much money. If you have $200,000 in your 401k, your Roths, your SEPs, and your cash, and that all makes up 200 grand, I'm not comfortable with you spending 100, to go invest into a short-term rental. If you only have 100, I'm definitely not comfortable with you investing $100,000. I mean, I won't invest more than about 25 to 30% of my total cash because I always want to have the cushion and I've always got to have the carry costs if we have another COVID or if, the market crashes. What happens if the real estate market crashes? What happens if consumer confidence goes down and people stop traveling and you lose 30% of your income? If you lose 30% of rental income right now today, do you have the means behind that, the additional money to be able to cover those costs? If you don't, you shouldn't invest. If you do, then you can invest. That is really, really important to have the carry costs behind it. So the property that I looked at yesterday on my 10-hour journey is going to cost me about $4,500 a month to operate. So that's about $52,000 a year. $52,000 a year. So for me, I cut that in half. So that's roughly about 26,000. I'm not real smart. So let's just call it 25K. So this property is going to cost me about 100 grand roughly to acquire and to get set up. So if I do that, right, then I'm going to need carry cost 4,500, 25,000 bucks. I'm going to need another $25,000. So it's really going to be 125 grand. So I'm factoring in like 3% for closing costs. I'm factoring in travel dollars, setup dollars, all that type of stuff. Then I'm factoring in 6 months of carry costs. That's the just in case you fuck up. That's what I talk about like when I played professional golf. We had these yardage books that would measure everything, the greens, the trees, the water, carry it over, laying up short of it. And there was always this just in case you fucked up yardage. We're not supposed to hit shots like way off the map, but when we hit one really bad to where we'd have a yardage to like pitch out out of the trees, back into the fairway or whatever that is. We need to have just in case you fuck up money, especially if you're new. If you're on property 0 or property 1 or property 2 or property 3, then one, you should have other eyes on your underwriting. That's really important because that's where I see the biggest mistakes that are being made. 2 are people are spending way too much money. Hey, Kirk, too much money to get into the game and you're putting your family and your future at risk. Andrew, I'd rather see you continue to co-host, take on a couple of bigger co-hosting clients, make more money in your photography, get that number to 200,000. Then let's go buy your first $450,000 property and have some extra cash to be able to put into it and then save the other 50% of your cash. So that way, I mean, you're so young, you've got so much time. Don't jump in and take too bigger risks right now. You do have more time to recover if you make a mistake, but I'd rather see you have some additional capital behind it to be able to mitigate that risk. Circle City Traveler. Google Travel has listed STRs on its platform since 19, but rarely gets mentioned as a P1 tool. I don't know what P1 means by most US STR operators. Do you see them making larger impact in the next few years? Jim from Indy, MTFB. I don't know what that means either. But yes, I do believe Google. It's one of the reasons at Market STR that we are integrating all of our direct booking sites with them and getting everything set up for you guys. There's not enough talk about Google. I think it's the biggest threat to Airbnb right now, and it is early. I get that it's been around, but it hasn't had traction. It's gaining traction now and fast, and it is something that everybody needs to have on their radar. And if you do want to get a competitive advantage or be ahead of the market like I do, then you want to start migrating that way. There is absolutely no question. Any other questions? Pop them in the comments. How do you choose the best cost seg company? On the surface, they all seem the same except for price from Just Boils. They are not all the same. Number one is, are they doing virtual or are they doing in person? So are they literally having your cleaner, or you just doing a FaceTime, or are they physically sending an engineer on site? That's really the biggest difference. Number two is really looking at people that have used specific companies and their engineers and figuring out, how happy are you? What type of returns did you get? It's a challenging thing. Yeah, I use one guy to do mine. I've used two companies, and I love the guy that I'm using now. He will actually be at the STR Wealth Conference and doing a session on exactly this stuff, which I think is super important from a tax perspective. I've got him, John and Ryan Bakey are going to be doing a session together based strictly on taxes, accelerated depreciation, cost saves, how to get the best ones to take advantage of all that stuff. Super duper important for those types of things, but really challenging to delineate. I can tell you that I will not use a virtual anymore. I'm seeing bigger results by going through an engineer actually coming on site and physically auditing the property. It's typically a little bit more expensive, but when you're talking a very minimal difference from like $2,500 to $4,000, $1,500, having an engineer on site almost every time is going to probably make you $10, $15, $20,000 more just on an average cost egg. So that's the path that I would go down. Thank you, Circle City Traveler. Priority one, thanks. May the force be with you. You would think that I would have known that, but really appreciate that. I think that's it for questions. Literally going to get out of here in 30 minutes. That's not possible. But I do have a multifamily property sitting in my inbox that I need to take a look at. I live in Louisville. I have my STR in Gatlinburg. How do you personally track your time for material participation? I use a Google Sheet and track it. Ryan actually recommends Reps Tracker to be able to track as well. And I just document every single thing that I do. I usually fill it out on a weekly basis. I am not diligent enough to do it every single day by any means. But I'm also in a little bit different scenario, Catherine. I am in a position to where I qualify for the 500 hours. I've got plenty of properties to be able to do that. So I believe I can be a little bit more flexible than somebody that's like literally trying to get 100 hours in between now and the end of the year. But I just use a Google Sheet to be able to track it, and I just kind of have a tab for each property. So I do bundle a lot of stuff too, because if I go in, I do a lot of bulk updates and price labs and stuff like that. So, but I will go in and log it for each individual property so I can get credit for it. So that does kind of help when you have multiple properties. One of the things that I think is really important right now, folks, if you guys are investing, is the underwriting process. Kenny Bedwell and Ryan Bakey just put out a brand new pro forma, which I would highly recommend for you guys to grab. It's not overwhelming. It's not too big, but it's also not a pricing calculator. It's a great deal. I've also got one of my own. I've never released it publicly, but I am putting it into my new inner circle. If you guys saw the email for this, and I have some, if you guys want to get into my inner circle, I haven't really announced this yet, and I'm not going to announce it publicly for a little bit, but you can just comment inner circle here in a comment, and I'll have Libby, my social media manager, follow up with you, or I will follow up with you to give you some information about my inner circle. Hey, Emil, here in the OR in Texas, Emil is a anesthesiologist, and he must be working today. He's in my mastermind. Hope you're doing well. So he has Host by Mirror Google businesses set up out of Texas, but on the map it stretches and does business from Texas to Florida. Reviews are growing, but truly maximize SEO capabilities long term. So I need to have a Google business in each specific market. Yes, you want to set up each individual property. One of the advantages to that is that when somebody searches the map, and if you do it correctly, then they'll be able to see your property that's there. So I love that specifically. There's pros and cons to that, because a lot of people, depending on how you feel about your property, like I don't give addresses out to my properties when somebody books. Even if I still use strict cancellation policies. So even when they're past that policy, I don't give it out to them. I do it 3 days in advance. Used to do it the day before, but now the Airbnb, Brian Chesky's made it abundantly clear he wants them to have all that information 72 hours in advance. I do it then. And having the Google My Business is really important because you're going to pull up on the map. Specifically, if you're doing things like I'm doing, like targeting visitors in the vacation rental markets I'm invested into while they're there to try to get their bookings that come back the following year. It's really important to have a Google My Business, even if you're using Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads or TikTok or Instagram, because that's kind of the verification source, and that will end up pulling up number one for you as well. Now, the one thing I don't do is I don't put a lot of effort into SEO that much, just because I'd rather I'm building my brand for the property more so than I am for SEO. I'm just not. It takes too much time for me. I'm not saying don't do it, but if you are going to do it, really Google My Business and to get in early and then get listed on Google Vacations is going to be a huge deal. One of the things with search engine optimization is to be early. If you can be legacy, like really right now, still the number one thing for SEO and like real websites is domain age. You know, if you have an age domain name that you've had for 20, 30 years, and I go fire one up and I've only had it for 6 months, you have such a competitive advantage. And I believe that same thing is going to happen with Google My Business. And it is happening with Google My Business. It'll happen with our Google vacation sites as well. Candace, how would you build a marketing strategy for relocation clients? We have furnished rentals and our real estate agency also. That's really, in my opinion, is through the largest relocation company that is in the markets. You know, could be a Bob Parks, could be, you know, a Caldwell Banker Barnes, you know, whatever that is. But if you're a real estate agency, then that might be challenging if you're not involved with them. That's a tough target from an online or a digital marketing standpoint. I wouldn't even know where to begin, honestly, to try to give you some advice just off the cuff. I'd have to do a little bit of research. But for me, I would not put dollars into any type of online marketing. I would literally, because typically those agencies are going to know ahead of time who's coming, and I would want the referrals coming from them. Wrestling with real estate. I have a tough shed. It gets air conditioned in my backyard. I want to turn it into an escape room, but I have no idea how to go about it. Any suggestions? As somebody, I don't know how you would. Well, I guess no. I mean, I would just kind of, if it was me, I would just kind of DIY it and figure out some hidden clues and stuff like that. Google it. I'm sure there's, if I did a Google search, there are things how to build an escape room. If I just type that in, I'm no expert in this, but let's see. I'm just pulled up Google right now. How to build an escape room at my home. Halloween FX props, complete escape rooms, scripted escape room storylines. It's all there. Just Google it. Just one super quick deal. I mean, a tough shed. It's air conditioned. Hopefully, it's a bigger one. Give it an experience. I've never heard of that before. That's a great idea. I've never owned an escape room. I did used to own a laser maze challenge in my glow golfs, which was like 8 by 12. You could be starting a new thing there, Mr. Wrestler. I mean, that literally could be people dropping, you know, pods or containers and or buying tough sheds to put in their backyard and have escape games in it. We might people start creating them inside of, you know, extra rooms like this in their house. Cool idea. I've never really thought about that, to be honest with you. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Let's see. How has your SDR investing strategy evolved or changed, or what are you now doing? Seems like you're getting bigger properties. It's interesting. I just did, if anybody knows who Sean Moore is from Vodacy, I just did his podcast, got done about 4 minutes before starting this. And so you guys see the term super property that I coined, right? And there's a misconception with that. And super properties don't necessarily mean bigger. I've got a lot of bigger properties that are 5 and 6 bedrooms, if you want to classify those as bigger properties. I have a 2-bedroom condo that's a super property. A super property doesn't mean that the properties are bigger. A super property means that you're maxing out all the return on investment within that individual property. So one of the things that I think is really important for me is that I am looking market by market. So when I went and bought a 2-bedroom condo in Glacier, the investing strategy is always doing deep research, right? So one, I was attracted to how high end they were. Then when I actually put my eyes on it and saw the construction quality, it was insane. The family that built them, owns the lumber mill. They do their own cabinets, their woodwork. So they handmade the stairs. They did even the window casings, the doors, the bed frames, the cabinets. They built all of that by hand in their lumber factory, literally half a mile down the road. So that was attractive to me. But as I do deeper research, I found out that the scenic zoning started right at the edge of their property line, going all the way up Highway 2 to West Glacier. So there is no new construction residential that is currently permitted. And it's like moving heaven and earth to get scenic rezoned to be able to do residential. So I'm going to have the highest end luxury property, even though it's a 2-bedroom condo, between there and the entrance to the national park that's 4.2 miles away. That's part of the investing strategy. Here's the thing that I'll tell you that most of you guys may make mistakes with is you're only investing into the dwelling. You hear everybody talk about location, views, proximity. I think proximity is the most important. When I first started, it was views and location. I know now that the access is just as important. It was really accentuated for me when I was in Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge a couple of weeks ago and pulled up the GPS, and it said that the house that we were staying at was like 18 minutes from Pigeon Forge, or really just doing a Google map search. And then we left to arrive there at 9 o'clock when it opened, or 10 o'clock, whatever it was. And it took us like 50 minutes, almost 3 times longer to be able to get there because the traffic is so bad. But you don't hear anybody talking about access in the Smokies. Traffic's horrendous there. I was in the Outer Banks where we have a mega super property. Now, Mike, that's a big one, but it's still just 6 bedrooms, but it's still a big property with a pool, beachfront, all that type of stuff. Got another one closing on Monday. It's going to be a beachfront property, about 5 miles away from that one in the OBX. I am rehabbing a mega super property, turning a 7.6 into what's going to end up being either a 12 or a 13.9 at Smith Lake on my lake. That I would classify as a ginormous property. Super properties are just properties that outperform, that are you're maxing out the revenue potential. So that's really what's evolved in my strategy as I'm looking for maximum potential. The property I looked at yesterday was listed as a 4-bedroom. I got inside the property. I can turn that into a 5-bedroom for about $4,000 to $6,000. That is a small investment to add another bedroom, and just by default add another probably 20 grand a year onto this property. This is not a big property by any means. It's 2,750 square feet. It's got 3 levels to it, 2 stories with a basement, but the location is prime. The views are prime. You can probably still see it in my Instagram stories at Bill Faith 73. You can see it right there. Go to my Instagram. I posted 2 or 3 videos of it yesterday, and you'll see the prime location. You'll see the videos. And a lot of this is the configuration, right? So the house is cute. It's beautiful. It's awesome, but it's got these what do you call it? The French doors that open, and it just accentuates the view. I opened them up, and I literally could feel that 65-degree breeze blow into the house that was warm. And now I can see the downtown area. I can see the private steakhouse that I'm a member at. I can walk there actually, but I see the mountains. I see the ski resort. And then I'm looking at, oh my gosh, I got 30 inches here, 30 inches on that side. I can go up about a foot. I could put some amazing accordion doors or sliders in here and increase that view and increase that openness by about 30, 35%. That's how you build a super property. You got to have the vision. You got to have that stuff. That's what I teach and how to build a super property. Those are the things that become super important. You want to learn, you want to get in my inner circle. Like I said earlier, just comment inner circle, send me a private message and just say, hey, I want to know about your inner circle, or comment it here. That inner circle, that access stuff, this is really hard to teach here. That takes time. That takes conversations. That's the only way you're going to get access to me to have those conversations and my coaches is going to be in my mastermind or in my inner circle. And that's the critical part about the strategy. The strategy really has never changed for me once I learned how to invest. I can tell you, STR number 1, I didn't know how to do it. STR number 2, I didn't know how to do it. I got better on 3. I got better on 4. I got better on 5. That's why you need to understand the framework, the vision, how to see things, and understand the intangibles that goes behind the data. That's what I love about Kenny Bedwell, who's an OG in my mastermind, about our STRonomics podcast is that he's the data guy, I'm the intangible guy, right? And I look at the data first, but then I'm looking at how do I push that data higher? You got to have the vision and the execution outside of just what you see in those numbers. And that's available in almost every single property. The question is we really need to make sure that we're underwriting that realistically, if that makes sense. Whew. Candace, how would you use social media to target potential workers that are coming for work when we don't typically know where they currently live? No clue. Don't know how to do that. That's like if that's the last two things that you posted, if those are your buyer personas, you're going to have a very difficult time doing that. So that's kind of goes back to the evaluating process. Just explain this on Sean's. If I have to work that hard and it's going to be that difficult and I'm the expert marketer, right, that's run over $15 million in Facebook ads, I'm not buying that property. And I want to make this abundantly clear to everybody. These are great questions, Candace. I'm buying properties that are marketable. That's the biggest thing to do this, right? That house, super cute that I walked through yesterday. Love it. Finishes are awesome. Fireplace, the rock wall, the cabinets, everything's great. But if I don't have the marketability of that location, the proximity, the views, I'm out. If I don't have room to expand the fire pit, if I don't have room to add the hot tub, if I don't have a place to put a coffee bar, if I don't have a place to put a breakfast cereal bar, if I don't have all these other things that I can add in to stack value upon value upon value, then I'm not going to buy the property. Because you need to know who you're going to market to and how you're going to market to them before you sign the contract to make an offer. That's why I only go after wealthy Wendy, even in my 2-bedroom, even in this house, which will not be a mega giant, super property. I know wealthy Wendy is my buyer persona. That's a fictional representation of my ideal buyer. I've got a picture of her. I named her. I know what Wendy likes. I know what her interests are. I know what she reads. I know what she drives. I know how many kids she has. I know what, suburban areas that she lives in. If you know that, and you look at a property and you know how you're going to stock it, you're thinking about the color palettes and the textures and the textiles. You know how much what wealthy Wendy's going to want to do inside of that property. Once you have all that nailed and then how you're going to market to her, then make the offer. If you don't nail that part, I can't emphasize this enough. It's going to be an uphill battle for you. That marketing part is what makes it easy. That's what makes me capable of outperforming the 90th percentile by almost 53% right now. You've got to learn how to see that ahead of time. Would love to attend or help organize an indoor STR pickleball tourney for Charity Day before STR Wealth Conference 2024. STR loves pickleball. Actually, I'm looking at a property right now that has 3 pickleball courts in it. That would probably need to happen on Monday morning or Sunday of the conference, just FYI. Turner, what would you put in the 21 by 12 by 16 high garage if you converted it to get more bookings in Nashville, if you already have the maximum 4-bedroom allotment? So that's going to be totally based on my buyer persona. If I'm targeting bachelorette parties, it's going to be different than if I'm targeting families, or if I'm targeting wealthy Wendy and wealthy Walter and their friends that are coming in for business for, HCA, or if you're going to be targeting mids. Once again, you got to define, you got to know who that buyer persona is going to be first. Then you can figure out what's going to go in there. So I'll give you an example. My high-end luxury 2-bedroom condo in Coram, Montana, which we'll just call it the Glacier National Park condo because I haven't named it yet. We have a similar size room, which is the 1-car garage. So we are making it a super nice game room. Not like black light and neon signs and stuff like that, because that doesn't tie into the buyer persona. That doesn't tie in to the overall design element and the construction of the property. So we have a lot of wood games that are going in, like shuffleboard, that type of stuff, a really nice dart board setup that's going to go in. We do have some video games, but like we did Pac-Man with the darker, doesn't look as crazy as like the yellow and the mist Pac-Man. A lot of these things are intentional in what we're putting in, a 1 to 2 person sauna that doesn't take up much room, like an infrared sauna that's going in. So everything is, I can't tell you exactly what to do, Turner, but everything is around that buyer persona. Because if it's bachelorette parties, I'm just going to do Party Central inside of there for them, give them a place to hang out and party, and disco lights and music and Taylor Swift stuff and all that type of stuff. If it's corporate travelers, it's completely different. What is the timeline for STR Super VA specifically to help with your Market My STR program? Don't know the answer to that. I believe we have 1 or 2 ready to go right now. You can go to the website at strsupervas.com and check that out, but I'm not 100% certain on that. How would you target guests coming in town for a specific event, all around the event? If it's a football game, if it's even conferences and that type of stuff. So Turner, if you're in Nashville, I've been doing this since my Grand Avenue and Silver Oak limousine days. I was a member of the CVB, the Convention Visitors Bureau, before they changed their name. Became really good friends with Butch Spearden. And I would know the major conferences, the major events. I'm not just talking about Taylor Swift coming to town, or Tennessee Titans football games, or if Lollapalooza is coming, or whatever it is. I'm looking for those, even the big conferences, and it's amazing. So I went into the local Nashville, short-term rental group 2-3 weeks ago and put a post in, hey, I've got 3,000 STR people. These are your clients coming February 5th through the 8th. If anybody would like me to add your listing because you have availability to our website, let me know. And nobody replied. Nobody. Not charging them, didn't ask for a commission. Hey, just want to help you local hosts. And they gave me like the big finger. Nobody. What the fuck? This is how easy it is, folks. Just do a little bit, because everybody else is too fucking lazy to do the marketing. Sales marketing needs to be your skill set. So Turner, target the big conferences that are coming in, all of our big events that are coming in, like CMA Music Night a couple of weeks ago, the music festival, the big concerts, the Taylor Swifts, all that type of stuff. You can target them through organic social media, hashtags. They have Facebook groups. They have LinkedIn groups, depending on what it is. Like one of the big ones that I used to do for my ground transportation company, and it's all the same, was alumni groups on Facebook. So think about how well, Alabama, UT, all those like football teams travel when they come to trounce us at Vanderbilt, right? Because they might not be able to get in the lottery to get tickets or whatever it is. And they just, SEC football travels. Well, I'd be targeting those alumni groups and trying to get them to come and stay at the Airbnbs and that type of stuff. So a lot of it's guerrilla, buy, sell, trade groups in other markets is huge. So, but once again, you got to know your buyer persona. What do you supply for Milkshake Bar and Waffle Bar? Milkshake Bar is a custom milkshake machine that my neighbor made for us in Montana. And then, all the everything single package fixings. I don't know. I guess there's Oreos, there's chocolate syrup, there's waffle cones, a bunch of stuff. We don't do like the milk and the ice cream because it's perishable. Waffle bar, waffle mix single. We get it off Amazon. Chocolate chips, marshmallows, sprinkles, like 4 or 5 different types of syrup, that type of stuff. If you go into Favorite Fridays posts and just type in and search my name, you can probably see where I've posted and see all that type of stuff as well. Thank you so much. Appreciate all your insight. Looking forward to the conference next year. It'll be my first time. Awesome, Candace. Look forward to meeting you. Please make sure you come up and say hello. Love to meet you. Where is the new place? Did you offer? Nope, has not been accepted yet. And I am not telling anybody where it's at yet. You'll be the first to know. Maybe the second. Any good buyer persona templates out there? Yeah, I teach that. I've taught that at boot camps. I think there's some in the Host Academy, potentially. It's really pretty simple, Mike. Literally, you just have to figure out who your ideal buyer is, give it a name, give it a photo. What does he or she like? What are their interests in? What do they read? What are their hobbies? What do they drive? You just want to learn as much about them as you can and then build it out so that way you can apply to go to your marketing concepts. It's probably a 2 to 3 hour deal to teach some, maybe not that long, maybe an hour to 90 minutes to really go through and teach it. It's in my Host Academy. It's definitely in my boot camps. We do that anytime we do a marketing deal. Can you have multiple personas? You can have multiple buyer personas, but you better think of it like a Venn diagram to where you have number one here, number two, and number three. You focus on the overlap in the middle. Now, just understand the more buyer personas that you have, the more you're going to dilute the ability to take care of the primary buyer persona. That's kind of the problem that I see with Nashville is like you either got to be bachelorette party or non-bachelorette party. That's like the first decision that you have to make right off the bat. And if you are, then you should go all in on that. So I have made an absolute killing in life by going all in on the niche. Like, look at here. I can teach people how to arbitrage. I can teach people. I make $400,000 a year net co-hosting, right? I can teach people how to scale a co-hosting. I built one course and then it's hands off because my focal point is teaching you guys how to build real wealth through investing into real estate, right? So if I go and I do a lot of co-hosting stuff, right, and it's 50-50, then it dilutes the other half of this and go, well, is Bill really a co-host? Or does he buy or own his own stuff? Does he really own it? Or is he just co-hosting it and saying that he owns it? We need clarity, right, from the marketplace. So that's why I always try to niche down and be as specific as possible. Had someone who wants to rent an STR for a full year. I told them full year payment up front plus 15% over my total year revenue. He still wants to take it. Would you rent it long term? I mean, if it makes sense financially, 100%, I would. I would just make sure, as you know, Eric, you're a smart guy, have an ironclad contract, for damages. I would definitely have, additional insurance on that. And I would probably take, even though he's going to pay 15% over your annual revenue, I'd make sure that you take a pretty significant, deposit on that as well. Is the persona training in the inner circle? 100% persona training is in the inner circle. That is something that we will always go over in the inner circle because you need to know that, as I said earlier. The buyer persona, James, great question. The buyer persona is everything. Everything. You have to build that out before you buy the property. You have to keep that buyer in mind as you're designing the property, as you're making decisions on amenities, as you're thinking about budget. Look, Wealthy Wendy, as an example, doesn't ever want to stay in a property that is not as nice as her own home. So if you really understand how much income you're targeting with Wealthy Wendy, what type of property that they live in, and you want to target Wealthy Wendy, you've got to make sure that you're at that level or above. Look, it's funny. My house, I live in a pretty nice house. 7,000 square feet, nice part of town, Brentwood, just south of Nashville. But my house is not as nice as some of our STRs. Heck, we didn't even do our first remodel. We've lived here for 15 years until 2020, right in the middle of COVID. And we updated our kitchen. Then we updated our master suite. We've done painting. I've just repainted my entire basement. But it's not as nice as what I put into what I want my neighbors to be able to stay at when they come and invest at $1,100 a night with me, if that makes sense. So, James, awesome question. Building out the buyer persona is the core to my success in building super properties. That is part of the inner circle. We just message inner circle. Yep, James, just send inner circle. You can put it in the comments or you can send me a private message and I can get you information on that now. It's 1:02. If anybody has any last minute questions, I am more than happy. Outer Banks Beach Homes, you're very welcome. Super awesome. Love it. Throwing the super in there. If not, I will go start my Faith Fridays and place a couple of calls to my brand new Inner Circle people. If you guys need anything from me, just leave a comment down below. If you're watching this on the recordings, have a wonderful day. And hang on, I just got a message. Okay, cool. All good. Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for being here today and happy hosting, everybody.